Welcome to the Lexington Public Library's Tales from the Kentucky Room podcast, where we discuss everything Lexington and Fayette County history. I'm Mariam, and in each episode of this podcast, we will feature a guest that will share a piece of local history. So thank you for tuning in and enjoy. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So today on the podcast, we have Lucy Jones. Lucy grew up in central Kentucky. She spent some time away at boarding school in the early 90s and moved back in 2009. She studied film theory and worked in film promotion, so she joined the Lexington Film League as soon as she moved back here. In 2011, Lucy founded the Harry Dean Stanton Festival. She also helped organize the Slang film series and hosted several film series at the Farish, focusing on directors such as Nicholas Ray, Hal Ashby, and Dorothy Asner. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
All right. Harry Dean Stanton is from Lexington. Tell us a little bit about his early years and how he got started in arts and film.
Sure, absolutely. He was born in 1926 in West Irvine, Kentucky. So he's a Kentucky native. He grew up there and also in Lexington. His mother moved here when his parents got a divorce. He went to school at Lafayette. Yeah. Don't want to get that wrong. Went to Lafayette along with Jim Varney and Richard Hell. There's a lot of esteemed alumni from there. And then he went to University of Kentucky, and that is where he discovered acting at the Guignol Theater. Yeah. And so then he actually went to war. He was a World War II veteran. Oh. And then when he came back, he pursued acting further, and then he decided to go west. So he traveled out to California to seek fame and fortune and succeeded. Yeah. And so we try to celebrate him every year here in the Bluegrass, where he had his origins.
When he moved out west to promote his work, did it take him a long time to get established?
It did. Decades. I mean, it was decades of television work. So when you look at Harry Dean's IMDb, he's got like 200 credits, and a lot of that is the early TV work that he did. He would be in westerns, the Bonanzas, the Petticoat Junctions, all of the little bit roles. They sometimes playing 2 or 3 different roles on the same series, because the idea being that those characters were somewhat forgettable. And he actually was credited as Dean Stanton at that time, because there was already a Harry Stanton who was in SAG, so he had to be Dean Stanton for a number of years. And then once he got into movies and started getting a little more recognition, and Harry Stanton sort of faded back, Harry Dean got to take his name back.
That's great. So when did Stanton get his big break?
Interestingly enough, for a fellow born in 1926, he did not really hit his stride until 1984. And in that year, he was in 2 really pivotal films for his career. Repo Man, which will be screening at the festival this year, which I'm so excited because we've been trying to get the director Alex Cox here for years, and he has agreed, and so we're elated about that.
Oh, wow. You heard it here first?
Yes, you've got the scoop. So we have Alex Cox coming for that, and so that same year, he was also in another picture that also had the same cinematographer. Robbie Mueller worked on Repo Man, and he recommended Harry Dean for Paris, Texas, which was his first ever starring role, and was actually his only starring role until the last role of his life, the movie Lucky.
Of those 200 IMDb credits, which films is he best known for?
Sure. I always say that showing somebody a picture of Harry Dean is like giving them a cinematic Rorschach test, because when you show them a picture, whatever they say first pretty much defines who they are as a moviegoer. So lots of people, when they see them, they're like, oh my gosh, the dad from Pretty in Pink, or oh my gosh, it's Brett from Alien, or oh my gosh, Avenge Me from Red Dawn. So there's so many different, I mean, he played so many characters, but so many characters that really stick with people, and characters that really defined the films that they were in.
What are your favorite Harry Dean Stanton movies?
For me, Repo Man. Because that was I'm trying to remember, Tom Thurman made this wonderful documentary about Harry Dean, and one of the talking heads in the movie was talking about how there's a moment where in your life where Harry Dean all of a sudden clicks with you. You've seen him in a million things, and he's been with you all along, but at some moment you're like, wait, this guy. And from thenceforward, you can never not notice him. So that was it for me. I had seen Cool Hand Luke growing up a ton. We actually had one videotape, my parents for their VCR, and that was Cool Hand Luke. And I lived in the country, and we didn't have cable, so I watched Cool Hand Luke a really unhealthy amount as a child. I didn't really understand the movie. I watched it constantly. But he never, so I think he was like in my subconscious, but it wasn't until I watched Repo Man. It was a midnight movie at the Kentucky Theater. I was 15 years old, and I walked out and I said, oh my gosh, what just happened? mentioned, who was that guy? And somebody was like, oh, that's Mary's uncle. And I was like, wait, whoa, what? And they're like, yeah, he's from Kentucky. And that just like, as a 15-year-old kid walking out the Kentucky Theater, that blew my mind that there was a local connection. So I think.
And was that connection for you personally a hook into film, or did you love film from before? Or
I think I was that summer. That summer that the Kentucky Theater reopened, and I was watching movies constantly. I mean, and back then, there were 3 different movies that they were showing a day, and there was a lot of repertory stuff, and when you got the calendar, it was like the biggest deal ever. And so for me, that summer, and Repo Man's definitely tied up in there somewhere, but that summer of movie going at the Kentucky is pretty much the spark.
So why did you pick Harry Dean Stanton for the festival?
It was kind of an accident, to be honest. When I was a kid, I loved going to Fairmont, Indiana, where they do a James Dean Festival, and it was my favorite thing to do. And when I came back to Kentucky, Sarah Wiley Bandmeter and Kylie Lane, who were doing the Lexington Film League together, and they asked me if I wanted to join, and I said, oh gosh, of course, that sounds amazing. And then they said, well, what would you like to bring to it? And it was one of those like moments where you're like, oh gosh, I need to come up with something real fast. And I was just like, well, we need to do a festival for Harry Dean Stanton. And they said, who's that? And I said, well, that's exactly why we need to do it.
Yeah, a lot of locals don't know him by sight, or even if they do recognize him, they don't realize that he's actually from Lexington.
And as soon as I said who he was, like the movies had been there, and they're like, oh, of course, that guy. But he doesn't have that immediate name recognition.
Part of what made Harry Dean Stanton so good was his ability to blend in completely into his characters. Do you think that harmed him in a way?
He was too good. He was too good at what he did. He was too good at blending into his characters and becoming them.
Yeah. So what other festivals are you working on?
We're really excited about Film Slang. That is something that started with Boom Slang, which was part of the University of Kentucky. That was their music series. And at some point, they reached out to the Lexington Film League before I got involved and said, would you like to participate? And so they did a standalone screening. And then the second year, I was involved, and it started out very small. We did a screening because we knew that we had a parking lot and there were bands. And so we were like, well, we obviously show Heavy Metal Parking Lot. I don't know if you all have seen that, but it's a really, really fun movie. So we showed Heavy Metal Parking Lot in the parking lot. And then that was the first year. So it was just like one movie, like a one-off kind of thing. And then Tom Sutherland at the Farish, we started working with him, and he came up, he knows everyone and has so many filmmaker friends doing so much interesting work. So the next year after that, he was just like, hey, would you be interested in expanding this? And he brought in Kentucker Audley and Martha Travis and some just amazing folks. So
Tom used to work for the library, and we are so proud of all of his accomplishments.
And I miss him so much. It really, there would be no Harry Dean Stanton Fest if it weren't for the library, and I don't think that we would have created that partnership had it not been for Tom.
We're glad you did. Did Film Slang also start at the Farish Theater?
Yes. And it's been amazing, and grew and grew and grew, and then we got to a point where we decided, it's too much really for one weekend. I don't think that the film audience in Lexington is necessarily there for, 20 movies in a weekend. So we are trying to space it out and making it a monthly event now. And Stephanie Fitch, who's on our board, has taken that and she has run with it. And she's doing great work. She teaches at BCTC, and so she's doing great stuff with the students there, and their filmmaking is just really astounding.
And these are all local films.
Exactly.
Films by locals.
100% Kentucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the opportunity to help support the local arts. So if our listeners want to participate. Submissions are?
Yes. You can go to our website, which is lexingtonfilmleague.org, and you can send an email. And I think the Film Slang Facebook page, you can send messages that way as well.
Can you tell us when the festival is going to be?
Yes.
What's coming up for you guys?
So for many years, we were kind of popping around the calendar and just sort of picking dates where we had guests that were available. Harry passed away, sadly, 2 years ago. And at that moment, we decided that we wanted to really anchor the festival to a date. And from now moving forward, Harry's friends always threw him a big birthday party in Los Angeles. So that's not happening anymore. So now we're honoring his birthday here every year. So it'll be around the weekend of July 14th. So
July 14th.
July 14th, it happens to fall on the weekend this year, so Harry's birthday will be the 35th anniversary screening of Repo Man.
Awesome.
So, awesome. So this year's festival is July 12th through the 14th.
12th through the 14th, and that's all happening in the Kentucky?
So we'll kick things off at the Loudon House. The Lexington Art League is sponsoring a screening of The Avengers, which a lot of people don't know that Harry was in the first Avengers movie, but I will say it brought me so much personal happiness when I saw that movie in the theater. Somebody had tipped me off to him being in it, and the moment he comes on screen, everyone in the theater applauded, and it wasn't it wasn't our screening, it was just at the mall. And so it made me so happy. So we're screening that, and that will be, again, at the Loudon House outdoor screening. And then Saturday we have 2 different films at the Farish. We're screening Kelly's Heroes in the morning, which is a really fun romp, and we haven't shown that yet. So the cast is insane, like Telly Savalas and Harold Connor, and oh my gosh, it's like so many character actors, and it's really so much fun. And then Clint Eastwood, of course. And then in the afternoon, we're going to screen The Last Temptation of Christ, which will also be a first for the festival. We've never shown that. We're showing a lot of stuff this year that we haven't shown in past years, which is really nice. And that's the wonderful thing about Harry's body of work, is that with 200 credits,
you have a lot to work with.
So many years, so many years. So that evening, we're doing a screening of Pretty in Pink at the Green Lantern, who've been a wonderful partner for us as well. And then we're going to have an 80s prom and dance party afterward with a costume contest and the whole thing.
That should be fun.
It's going to be super fun. And then the next day, we have 2 more screenings at the Farish. And we're doing 2 films starring Gene Hackman. So the first is Cisco Pike, which we have shown before, one of my very, very favorites. And the second film is a movie that I had not seen until recently. I knew that it existed, and I knew that we could screen it at the Farish. The Farish has this amazing movie licensing deal where we can screen so many movies there, which is
we're lucky.
fantastic. Oh my gosh, it's such a gift. So Zandy's Bride was one that I had never heard of or knew anything about, so I decided to check it out, and I was in utter awe of it. It immediately became one of my top 10 favorite movies ever. It is such a beautiful movie with Gene Hackman and Liv Ullmann and Harry Dean, of course. And it's one of those movies that came out in the 70s, and it's one of those movies where you're like, this feels really feminist to me. Please don't go off the rails. Please, movie, stay where you are. Stay in this lane. Keep making me feel good about you.
Don't disappoint me.
Don't disappoint me. And the movie, sure enough, is like a feminist masterwork. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
We'll have to check it out.
You must. And then that night we'll be screening Repo Man with Alex Cox at the Kentucky. So.
Yay. That's exciting.
Yeah, so most of our screenings are at the Farish because it's just such a wonderful, wonderful venue.
Where can people get information about the festival?
Go to harrydeanstantonfest.org. It'll all be right there, or go to our Facebook page and like us and follow us and all the things.
Thank you, Lucy, for being here and giving us a scoop on this year's Harry Dean Stanton Festival.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight to be here.
So those dates are July 12th through the 14th, and for more information about the festival screening locations, you can visit harrydeanstantonfest.org. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to Tales from the Kentucky Room, a podcast brought to you by the Central Library's Kentucky Room staff at the Lexington Public Library. If you enjoyed listening, please take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. If you have any questions about local history or genealogy research, you can visit us in the Kentucky Room to use our collection and newspaper microfilm, or you can email us at elibrarian@lexpublib.org. That's elibrarian@lexpublib.org. I'm Mariam, and we'll be back with another trip down Lexington's memory lane.